Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Billy Southwell, who helped the Southwell Company grow into what it is today, to the stage.
Welcome. Thank you. You just gave my speech. I shouldn't have let someone prove it. On behalf of the Southwell Company and the entire Southwell family, I want to thank everyone that came today. I want to especially thank the San Antonio Chamber for hosting, and of course, Red. It was his idea. He said he was going to throw his weight around, I think is what he told me, and he was going to get it done. So thank you, Red. I am going to talk about the Southwell Company, but I want to talk about the first time I met Red. I was 3.5. I was taken to one of those parties at Lone Star, and we went through the crowd. There were thousands of people in the crowd. My father handed me off to Red. I don't expect that you will remember this, but I was 3.5.
You were a pest.
I think what happened is my mother kicked me out of the house, and my father went to what he called a party. She didn't know what that party meant, but it was a JC party. And it was at Lone Star. I had never seen Lone Star. There were lights hanging from the trees. There were a band over here, live band, another live band over here. Every man had a cold beer in his hand. There were actually women dancing on the tables, which I asked Red about that, and he said, "Don't talk about that." But Red told me some things once he got me away from the crowd, and he said, "Your dad and I went to junior school and to high school in Corpus Christi, and your dad had my back." I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "We used to get in fights." You remember any of this?
A little bit.
And I said, "Well, how would you get in fights?" And he said, "We would play marbles." I said, "What does that mean, play marbles?" And he said, "We'd draw a circle in the dirt, we'd get down on the ground, and we'd shoot our marble and try to shoot the other guy's marble out of there. And we did this so we could make money to eat." I said, "What do you mean, make money to eat?" And he said it was the Great Depression. We didn't have food. We had one pair of overalls. That's all we had. It was the Great Depression. We needed food. And we would win those marbles, go sell them, and we would have food. And that's how we made money. He also told me another story about how you climbed a fence. And it was the backstop for a baseball diamond. And you would climb up on top of the outfield wall and watch the game. Do you remember that?
A lot of times.
Okay. And you told my father then, one day, you were going to buy that team. And you were going to buy it so that you could let kids in. And you'd give them a hot dog. And you did it. Do you remember that?
A little bit.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'll go on to the Southwell Company. As you already heard, you pretty much heard, as I said in my speech, we did start manufacturing stencils and rubber stamps. We grew to become one of the largest rubber stamp makers in the United States, mainly through military contracts. We made all the embroidered name tapes for all 5 branches of the service. We made a marking kit, a little white box. Inside the box was 2 rubber stamps, 2 ink pads, and 2 bottles of ink. Every basic trainee got one. Did anybody go through basic training in the Air Force, Army, or any of the 5 branches of the service? Did you get a marking kit? We made it. We did that for 80 years. That's what our business was built on, was the rubber stamps. Later, we grew into pre-ink stamps. All the way through the 20s, 30s, 40s, there was a war. World War I, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War. We were busy with making stamps for all these 5 branches. The embroidered name tapes, the engraved name tags. But then the wars stopped. Plus the product life cycle of the rubber stamp died. And computers were invented. And you no longer needed a deposit stamp to stamp on the back of the check. The cash register did it. So that product life cycle died. That's why we shifted into historical markers, dedication plaques like that one, which we made on the front of your building. We had to, and we were lucky that my grandfather did secure the state contract in 1936 for all those centennial markers, approximately 2,500 historical markers, all in cast bronze, because cast aluminum had not been invented yet. In 1960, as you said, my father worked with John Ben Shepherd and John Connolly. I'm sure that raises hairs on the back of Red's neck, because you worked with John Ben, and I guarantee you worked with John Connolly. They were both great Texans. They worked with my father in our living room, coming up with the program in 1960. 2 years later, we made our first marker. We've now made 16,000 plus cast aluminum historical markers for the state, and about 2,200 to 2,500 cast bronze for the state of Texas. We have over 20 states that we manufacture markers for now. Scott just got us an order for the state of Kentucky. Tomorrow we will pour our first Kentucky marker. We're working with New York State and Virginia. Virginia is a big one. They need 200 markers a year for 11 years. That's a lot of markers. They have talked to Scott and I on the phone numerous times. We're in the running, and I'm getting it. They brag that they have 2,600 markers in the state of Virginia. It's one of the 13 colonies. They've been in business for 400 years putting up markers. 2,600, 400 years? We have almost 20,000 in 54 years of putting up markers. So yes, everything's bigger in Texas. In closing, I just want to thank you all for coming. It's quite an honor. We're humbled by this event. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, I want to make a couple comments about the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce. It is the best in the country. Others learn from them, and they show that by the leaders that they pick. Richard, as you see right there, you're going to meet their beautiful president a little later. But I love the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce. But long before I ever knew there was a San Antonio Chamber of Commerce, I knew there was the San Antonio JCs. The Junior Chamber of Commerce, commonly known in the markets where they had affiliation, was called the JCs. I was living in Corpus Christi. In 1950, I met Billy Southwell and found out that the JCs for the state of Texas really kind of operated out of San Antonio. They were the active chapter. They were the ones that took on the most initiatives. They were the ones that we learned from. So this 150th anniversary for the Southwell Company is special, but I want to talk a little bit about, from a personal standpoint, is how special that the Southwell family has been, particularly like in my life. I've always looked up to others, try to learn from them, and the San Antonio JCs at that time, in their day, were the epitome of the entire country, not just the state of Texas. But they did things like during the time, the early 50s, someone came up from this place right here, probably Bill Southwell, because he was the leader of the San Antonio group. But they came up with the idea that we'd have our national meeting that year, I think in Philadelphia, and we'd drive new Buicks to go up there. And the Buick Company furnished all the cars. It was quite a sight. The big sight was trying to get them there without having them all wrecked. Because we had a lot of fun on the way. We raced each other forward, backwards, in between, whatever. But as long as it belonged to the Buick Company, it didn't matter. But at any rate, Bill Southwell and his family, I didn't really know so much about the business they were in then, But then, as I began to find out, they truly were what Texas is all about. And that is initiative, hard work, making things happen, making the community better than what it was, doing more than their share, and doing it very quietly. And I always felt like, in my own little world, that if I could have McCombs Enterprises have a 100th anniversary and still have a meaningful role in the community, it would be just the greatest thrill. I wouldn't be around, but it would be the greatest thrill that we could work forward to. And some of our people who are here today have heard that from time to time, because that's what we would like to do. We really admire everything about the Southwell family, not only what they do, which is a lot, but what they help all the rest of us do. And they always answer to every call that they get called upon. And Bill Southwell in particular, of course, he and I in the same age bracket, and so I was close to him and to Phyllis. And it was as much a social group as it was a business group. Well, to be honest, I don't want to be totally honest, but to be some kind of honest, it was probably a little more a social group than it was a business group. But we had a great thing going for us, and Bill and his buddies in San Antonio put it all together, because they created continual fights between Lone Star and Pearl, and then the Jaycees got all the beer while they were fighting each other. But a company that we're here to celebrate today is the Southwell Company. And they have been important to this community, to their employees, but indeed the entire state. You're going to hear more about that in a minute. So when we did the 125th anniversary, I couldn't believe that, honest to God, that we would have a company then that would later be the 150th anniversary. And I think it is, it's something that is just brings goosebumps to me, because we all get up each day, we go to try to work, we go try to make the places where we work better places. We try to make our town a better town to live in. But when you've got a company that is celebrating their 150th year here doing this, you can imagine what all that they've been through in all that time. They're still just as active. They're noted for being #1 in the type of business they do, which is a very unique business. And it almost is just absolutely shattering to think that we have a company that the same family, same product, same area, still here, doing the same thing. Why did that happen? Because they do it better than anybody else. So if somebody wants to compete with them, they're the best. You couldn't even try and get there. You're not going to get there. And they do the best, and they're more concerned about their customers and taking care of them than they are anything else. So to the Southwell family, to Phyllis and Bill in particular, I give them the absolute highest salute I can, because with 150 years under the belt and that, holding that together and guiding it the way that you have, which in itself is virtually impossible, but you've done it. It's something that we really admire you for doing, and I'm just happy that we could be here at the Chamber building and with all that they do for the community and what you tie into it. So thank you very much for letting me say a few words, and my salute to the Southwell Company.
Thank you very much. That's a beautiful plaque. Thank you. Red Dogs.
You got it, buddy.
Yeah, hey, I don't know how to say thank you. It's been a long, long time. Yeah, thanks a lot. I know all of you are here, and I love every one of you. And you've been with me from the beginning. And I want to keep my hand on my shoulder and keep you in my sites. Thank you for everything you've ever done. May God bless you. Amen.
Amen.